Well, good morning to all of you. It's awesome to have so many of you online. And Stuart, welcome. It's you and I have known each other for a very long time, and awesome to have you on our first webinar together.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much for the invite, Scott. Always great to participate with you.
So, Stuart, I think what I wanted to do is just give a little bit of an intro in terms of a couple of things and also your background, and then we'll get into some of the details. Obviously, there wasn't a huge amount of notice for this webinar, but equally, we've got a very timeous constraint that we're going to discuss in terms of what's changing. And I know that you've been involved in the space for a very long time. I personally have been on site, with your team, in Florida, and literally that was the best part of nearly 2 or 3 years ago. So we've known each other for a long, long time. But equally, at the moment, there's something that is very time constraints, and we'll get into the detail of that. But before I introduce and go through it, I just wanted to explain to people a little bit about why, for me, owning a offshore passport or having a plan B is so important. And I think a lot of people talk and they read books, but I've personally got a very, very personal story. And one of them, for me, was that my father, we half our family is from Zimbabwe, and sorry about that. Half our family is from Zimbabwe, and my father in 1976, decided that things in Zimbabwe were no longer as he wanted for his family. He moved to South Africa, but unfortunately, he had no plan B, and he was a farmer. He had to study again as an accountant. He had to work for someone else his whole life. He always wanted to work for himself, and unfortunately, through lack of planning, it wasn't an easy life for him. The comparison to that was my uncle, who also stayed in Zim, so he didn't actually leave Zim. But what he did do is that he created a business, and for every dollar he made, he put some of his money overseas. At the age of 30 in 1980, he set up an offshore bank account. And in 2003, and again, I want to be very clear, South Africa is not necessarily going like Zim. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it was about the freedom to make those decisions. And in 2003, he bought his way in at the age of 53 into Australia. He bought a house full cash for $1.8 million, which in 2003 was a lot of money. It's a lot of money today, but I guarantee you that things have gone up since then. He put his kid through a private school, which is Churchy, which is one of the best schools in Brisbane in Australia. And interestingly enough, his son is in the equivalent of our matric this year and has been offered bursaries to Melbourne, Harvard, Oxford, and Cambridge because of his rowing and his academics. And the one that probably counts most for me is that when you've worked your whole life, the last thing you want to do is immigrate and then have to work for someone else. And the fact for me is that he didn't have to work for an Australian, which I think is one of the biggest accolades. And I think the purpose, Stuart, just as a kind of a pretext to what we're talking about, is that for me personally, the lessons I learned from that story was two things. One is you need to take control of your future, otherwise, unfortunately, sometimes just people when they react, things just happen to them. And my father unfortunately just reacted and had to kind of deal with the consequences of life, whereas my uncle created the life that he wanted. And the whole purpose of this webinar for me is that we always say that investing offshore and even more so owning a passport provides you with peace of mind for you and your family. It provides you with wealth preservation, because when one looks at what's happening with the rand even more recently, you can work your whole life and have your wealth decimated pretty quickly in terms of global standards. And then it also provides you with a plan B. But the thing that most people don't understand, and actually the word that probably is the most important for me, is it's all about freedom. And I don't actually care where people want to live. I don't care who they want to donate their money to or where they want to go on holiday or send their kids to school. What I do care very much about and what I'm very passionate about is that people have the freedom to make those choices. And that is the reason why, for me personally, that we've got not only did we write the book with Clem Sunter, where we've tried to provide people with all the information. And, in this book, we literally looked at 16 different countries from Mauritius to Malta and all the different options in terms of investing. And to date, and I'll categorically tell you this, even if you read in the book, because most of the EB5 programs, and I'd love to know, Stuart, what your thoughts are on this, but most of them are actually fairly bad investments and, with very low returns and fairly weak property operators. And, and for me, I've spent my whole life looking for great opportunities, investment opportunities that can come with a passport. Now, I'm fairly blessed because I've got a British and an Irish passport, but a lot of my business partners like Henny Besaidnout, Michiel, etc., don't. And they've spent a huge amount of time looking into how they can get a passport offshore for all the reasons I've just mentioned. And for me, it gives me a huge confidence to introduce Stuart, because again, I've known Stuart for a long time. I've personally been on site with Jaco Maritz. I've met all his partners. But for me, someone I respect hugely is Henny specifically, but Michiel as well. And both of them have also spent a lot of time with you, Stuart, and not necessarily just understanding the EB5, which is the whole passport option, but more about who you guys are, what's your background, what is the property development skills. Because the best case scenario for us is where you find a quality investment and the EB5 or the passport is merely a cherry on top, versus the other way around. I often say in my book, I speak a lot about how people try and buy passports overseas, in certain countries, and I won't go into details, but it's a bit more like buying a boat. As much as I try and tell myself that my boat outside here is an investment, it's not. It's nice to have, but it costs me money. And the one thing that I wanted to do was to introduce effectively Stuart and his team, because again, as I said to you, I've got huge respect for Henny and Michiel, and not only did I do my own due diligence, but more importantly, they did their due diligence, and I found it very interesting. And I don't even necessarily know exactly the answers, Stuart, but since Henny met you, he's got a listed company in Australia, just for everyone's perspective. He's decided with him and his family that it's no longer Australia, it's America, and I know that he's been actively talking to you as one of the solutions. So with that, I can't say too much more, but really just to welcome you, Stuart, and to ask you, what is happening at the moment, what do you guys do, and how can you help people, and also why is it so timeless? Why did we have to rush this webinar?
Scott, I think, let's clarify a point. Our business model is we're not in the business of selling passports, and I think that's what makes quite a fundamental difference between our regional center, opposed to a lot of the other regional centers that are currently licensed in the US. If some of the investors that are online simply do a Google search in respect of the centers and the EB5 program, they'll notice that there are roughly about 600 odd licensed regional centers that are legalized and able to make this offering. We've been active in the South Florida area for over 14 years, and we come from a development background, and I think what makes us stand out quite substantially different to a lot of the other EB5 opportunities that are currently being marketed around the world is that in fact the investment stands up on its own 2 feet. So it's a twofold opportunity. You're coming in as a with us.
Stuart, can I ask you a quick question? Do me a favor, and South Africans are always terrible at this. Elaborate a little bit on your partners and your experience. And the guys out of Durban, as an example, and their experience locally, because obviously people understand that. And I'm talking primarily in the real estate space, because I agree with what you're saying. I just want to back it up so that people fully understand it.
Yeah, Scott. One of the big differentials is in fact that we're the only regional center that has got a South African representation. And in fact, our capital stack and our equity partners that make up the regional center are predominantly South Africans. And I'm only going to highlight 3 of them, although we've got a number of other people. But Peter Jagger and Don McCarthy, who are my direct principals, they've been in the property arena here in South Africa for possibly well over 40 years. And traditionally, we've invested in very large mixed-use developments. We currently have a private portfolio between Don and Pierre, roughly in the region of worth about 2 billion rand here in South Africa. So it's not as if we're going to be disappearing off the landscape in South Africa, but obviously we're diversifying our interests, and we have been diversified in South Florida for a long period of time. Peter and Don were also part of a listed entity. We delisted that entity in the late 80s for obvious reasons, because obviously being a listed entity, your personal information is in the public domain. And then more importantly, I think we've got another quite influential equity partner, and his name is Harish Mehta. If you guys have heard of Clearwater Capital, you may have heard of Clearwater Mall, Naspers, Tencent, Spar Holdings, RMB, and so the list carries on. And Harish and his consortium potentially play quite an important role for us, just in respect of our exit strategies. And our exit strategy in respect of exiting the EB5 investors is very solid. And also, currently in the South Florida area, we're busy with 2 projects just outside Fort Lauderdale, and we're busy at the moment with one in St. Thomas, which is in the US Virgin Islands, which will be our third EB5 offering. But our exit strategies are solid, and we've got a large South African contingent, and then we've also got 2 American partners. The one partner is a chap by the name of Chip Abel. Chip's been a seasoned South Florida developer, made a lot of his wealth in the boom time when commercial and industrial facilities were the boom. And then we've got Jose Berchetti, who comes from a South American family, and they made the majority of their wealth out of roads construction. So we've got a very strong South African consortium attached to us, and then obviously we've got very strong American partners who are on the ground and sort of steer the ship on a day-to-day basis. So we make up a very.
I just wanted to back that up, and I probably should have tried to find a photo. But a lot of people talk, and I mean, there's a lot of traveling salesmen out there, Stuart. But I've physically been to the office. It's a fairly substantial office. It's not a one-man band sitting in a virtual office type stuff. It's it's a really substantial development office with a full construction team, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've personally been there, on the ground in Florida, and I know that Henny and Michiel and them have as well. But for me, it's fairly important to always say that to people, because a lot of people hear a lot of stuff, but it's about actually touching it that's important.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, you guys have always philosophized about the strength of your partners on the ground. And I mean, just in terms of our office component, I mean, we've got in-house CPAs who look after the finances. We've got in-house project managers who manage the contractors. And we've got in-house QSs that manage the sort of CapEx spend. So, we look after it. And I think another very important point to highlight is that we've got substantial equity in these developments ourselves. I mean, just currently on the 2 sites in the city of Hollywood, we've got almost $60 million of our own cash lying in there, and we don't see any of that return until we exit our EB5 investors, and once they fulfill their criteria in respect of the immigration requirements for those that will take up an investment.
Stuart, before we get into your presentation, just quickly, just explain to me. Obviously, I've known about the EB5 for a long time, and it's been 500 grand for as long as I've known. The one thing that's really interesting is in Australia, I used the story of my uncle, and I think when my uncle did that back in 2003, it was like 300,000 Aussie dollars. Today, it's $1.5 million, and they're actually looking. There's regulation going through. They're looking to increase it to $5 million. And the reason being is that people all over the world are looking to get into first world markets, be it Australia, England, or America. And I know that, Michiel was very concerned, recently that obviously you'd expressed to him that they were looking to do exactly the same thing in America, and which was the reason that we kind of put this thing together almost on a whim, but to give people a chance, because from what I understood, even from what you said this morning, is that there's a good possibility it's going from 500 to 800. But just explain to us a little bit about the time constraints, because obviously I want to get into the detail, but I want people to understand right up front why this is urgent.
Yeah, Scott, it's a very urgent matter at the moment. I mean, we've got the aspiring devalue of the rand, so irrespective of whether one's got the US on your radar, or Australia, or Cyprus, or Malta, or Portugal. The reality is that if one is considering an alternative passport or residency program, the reality is that it's just going to continuously get more and more expensive for South Africans. The current EB5 program comes up for renewal at the end of September. Annually, there are only 10,000 visas issued under the EB5 program. And for the last sort of 3 fiscal years, the number of applicants have far exceeded the 10,000 annual visas that are made available. What currently is on the go is that the program comes up for renewal at the end of September. As you know, the Americans are in their great political stage performing at the moment, and there's been a change of head of the USCIS, which is the Immigration Services, and he's proposing a number of amendments to the bill currently before Senate. And a couple of the fundamental ones that we need to be aware of is that currently we're able to make an offering of 500,000 USD through our regional center because we fall within what's known as a TEA, a target employment area. If one was investing outside of the TEA, currently one would have to invest a minimum of $1 million. But some of the proposed legislation that he's put forward in his bill is that that threshold will increase from 500 to 800,000 USD within the TEA, and those that fall out of a TEA will increase from $1 million to 1.2. So that makes a big fundamental difference for South Africa, bearing in mind the weakness of the rand. There are also a number of additional regulations that he's wanting to propose in respect of the due diligence of regional centers. There have been a number of failures in the past, so there's going to be additional scrutinization from the SEC, Securities Exchange Control, because we really are in that realm because we're basically dealing in securities. So there'll be additional due diligence on regional centers, which we welcome. I think that it's going to clean up the arena quite substantially, and a lot of the unscrupulous, if I can use those words, regional centers will dissipate from the arena. Then there's a lot of talk at the moment in terms of the how one identifies a TEA. We're very fortunate that we are within a great proper metropole area. You know, we're in a vibrant economy. A lot of the other regional centers, I mean, some of the ones that you can invest into are the ski resorts in Vermont or tuna canning factories and marginal opportunities. And there are a number of concerns, Scott. So there's a lot of urgency, and I mean, at the moment, we're dealing with exceptionally high volumes of inquiries, and I mean, literally, we're getting on average between 5 and sort of 8 new inquiries from South Africans on a weekly basis, we're pushing hard to ensure that those investors that have got the US on the radar are going to meet the deadline.
Well, that was my last question before we get into your presentation here. Is that, let's say the deadline is kicking in on the 30th of September or whatever it is, the 1st of October. Again, today is the 8th or 9th of September. I mean, just getting your tax clearance is a problem within that time. I mean, is it realistic that if people can move fast, they can take advantage, or what is your kind of advice that you would give to people based on the constraints that you're sharing?
Yeah, Scott, it is possible. I mean, we've got our attorneys that are our immigration attorneys are LA based. I mean, at the moment they're working 24/7 in terms of the verification of the source of funds. In terms of getting Reserve Bank clearance, I think we're surrounded and we've got some professionals that assist us. It seems as if SARS have finally sort of streamlined that process, and we're getting clearance certificates in terms of those that are wanting to take out and utilize the annual allowances. We're getting those through between 5 and sort of 8 days. But one has to have the means and have access to the 500,000 USD. We're not going to have the time to facilitate bridging finances and or sell primary homes. We just don't have that sort of time on our hand. There is a huge amount of due diligence that goes into the actual source of the funds. For those investors that are going to be considering to go forward, they're going to need to prepare themselves for quite an intrusive process in respect of how we do the due diligence in respect to the source of funds.
Okay, so I mean, and again, if anyone, if you want to chat to Stuart, at the end of the day, today is kind of a high-level flyover, and then obviously it's for Stuart and his team, it's much better. Or Michiel, I don't exactly, Stuart, maybe you. I know Michiel's online as well, so if Michiel, you want to pop up, but I know that you guys have done a lot together. I mean, you've helped Hilda, who's one of our board members and partners. But my point being is that how do you and Michiel want to deal with it if someone is interested? Should they, are you going to deal with them directly, Stuart, or is Michiel going to deal with them? Or I'm just interested because we're going to go into the presentation now, but I'm just interested if someone's heard enough and they're like, right, I want to speak to Stuart or Michiel. What do they do? Who do you want them to talk to?
Yeah, Scott, I mean, if they just drop you an email, I know that Michiel is currently traveling in Atlanta and will be back next week. But I mean, I literally am on a horse and pony show at the moment. I'm sort of spending on average maybe one night at home and commuting almost daily between Johannesburg, Cape Town, Wilderness, Mossel Bay, you name it. So, yeah, I mean, we're there to see the guys, and I mean, they just need to make it.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Stuart.
Other Michiel.
Scott, what I can say is that if people are interested from the Wealth Migrate side, they can just give me a contact. I can give them the basic overview, what they need, and then really understand if that is something that they want to do. And then how me and Stuart then further work is once the person identified this is really something for them and they want to seriously consider, then, like Stuart outlined, he's extremely mobile in terms of what he can do and where he can meet. And then we just coordinate for a detailed session, and preferably the session should be ideally with the family. We had now 2 or 3 cases where we introduce Stuart to the whole family because it's really a family decision. And I think the message that I want to send to everybody that's looking at it is they must really be clear that they would like to move to America within, say, 5 years maximum. And if that is for you, then this program makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, that's typically how I handle it. And Stuart, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, maybe what I'd like to just focus, a lot of the South Africans that I deal with are concerned about the processing times and when one would need to physically enter the US and the sort of requirements to meet the minimum criteria once the conditional green cards are issued. And if an investor now, current processing time at the USCIS ranges, dependent on the file matter and the complexity of the file. Currently, our processing time to get a potential investor to an approval stage, where him and his immediate family, and that includes husband, wife, and children up to the age of 21, is around 13.8 months. It varies depending on the file, as I said, the complexity of the file matter. So from the date that we have got all the required supporting documentation and physically file a investor, it would take us about 13.8 months for the USCIS to make a final adjudication. Just on that point of interest, we have a 100% success rate, and currently we have had almost 200 EB5 investors invest with us. Of the 200 that have invested with us, obviously we've got worldwide presence. We're quite active in the Chinese market. The Chinese have been prolific in this program, but it's literally split almost equally between South African inquiries, Chinese, Russians, South Americans, English, a lot of inquiries currently coming out of the UAE as well. So current processing time is roughly 13.8 months, and then we go into what's known as a consular process. That is a further, currently if one is doing a consular process in Johannesburg, it will take about 5 months. At that point, your current visa in your passport, your current B1, B2 visa, gets cancelled, and you get issued with what's known as an temporary immigrant visa, and that then allows you and your family have got to make your first port of entry into the US within 6 months, and then you could physically come back home. And for those people that have got no immediate urgency to relocate to the US but are wanting to secure a green card, there are various mechanisms post-approval and post-issuance of a green card that we can assist in terms of delaying the actual exit from South Africa. But I mean, I'll go into detail on a one-on-one with potential investors on that.
So, guys, what I suggest is that if someone's interested and they want Michiel to contact them, if you can just type in there Michiel, in the chat box. So it's a little box up in the right-hand corner for you. If you just type in Michiel, then he'll know that you're interested and want to chat. What I suggest, Stuart, is let's run through the presentation you've got, and I'm sure you'll deal with a number of things, and then obviously we can do a Q&A, and if anyone's got questions, we can run through it. And obviously, Michiel, from your side, if there's anything you want to chip in, please go for it. I mean, there is the question and answer box if anyone wants to ask questions, fire away. But I suggest for now, let's run through your presentation, and I'm sure that you'll answer some questions, and those that aren't, we can cover at the end.
Scott, maybe just, sorry, just before we go there, I think one thing that as Wealth Migrate that we was very, very clear and that we had to focus on when we researched to find this program was that we found a lot of EB5 programs really is actually taking the money of investors and simply giving virtually no return. And you can really research the American EB5 market, and we've really talked to quite a few people in Atlanta, people in Montana, people in Texas, and what we have found is the vast majority of the programs is really pretty much you give your money and after a while you get the visa back. I think what is significant about the program that Stuart and them offer is that it really complies with the Wealth Migrate principles of where we jointly share in this journey and our interests are pretty much aligned. And this is, I think, the difference why we as Wealth Migrate is also very much promoting this program, because it follows that principles that the investor get a decent return and a visa. And I think this is the differentiating factor what Stuart and them can offer. And then further, an added bonus was that we were so surprised that actually it's South Africans that had made a joint venture with Americans. And with that, it's just a feather in the cap for South Africans again, and therefore also makes us much more comfortable to deal with Stuart and them as a partner. So from the Wealth Migrate side and also from the Wealth Migrate Investment Committee side, this was huge pluses, and therefore we're so comfortable with dealing with them.
Yeah, and I think also one thing that's important is it's not like Stuart and his partners decided last week that they should go to America. My understanding is, Stuart, they've been there, the Durban guys have been there for nearly 16 years or something, 14 or 16 years, I can't remember exactly, but it's a substantial amount of time.
14 years, Scott. Just out of interest, I mean, we decided on Florida for a number of reasons. I mean, in the good old days, SAA used to fly directly into Florida, and it just coincided that it was a sort of port of entry and a port of exit. John and Peter had been sort of semi-retired 14, 15 years ago. And, we invested quite heavily in the early days in condos and a couple of strip malls, and then decided to start doing slightly bigger acquisitions. I mean, we've got substantial stakes in and around the Fort Lauderdale area in respective land parcels. And then, Michiel, you guys also had the opportunity to meet the City Redevelopment Agency, who are assisting us with our various endeavors in and around the city of Hollywood. And I mean, it's just so great to have the city so fully behind you and supporting you and assisting you. I mean, on our first development, Hollywood Circle, we have a city redevelopment grant, which is in the region of about $14.5 million, and that's a contribution that the city's making. And then on our second project, which is known as Block 40, or will be called Young Circle Commons, there the city made a contribution of just short of $11.5 million. So, just to
Can I just chip in there? What is significant about the EB5 projects is that the American government is using this to uplift certain areas where they believe either there should be a complete rehabilitation or it's an area that was left behind. And then with this mindset or this background, myself and Annie was there now recently in August with Stuart and them. We met these developers, but what is significant about this project is that it's the natural progression of the city of Miami expanding north and the city of Fort Lauderdale expanding south. And this area is really the area that's really now typically like between Johannesburg and Pretoria is really in the natural path of growth. And therefore, it's not an area which is like the images that we get in our heads of Detroit or some leftover place somewhere in America. It's really mainstream, but it's in the mainstream of development. And this was also when we visited now in August, it was a great plus. And then what's so refreshing, contrary to South African experience, is that the city is proactive in adding bus lanes, they're adding paving, they're adding all these catalysts to enable growth. And one of the catalysts is this hotel and apartment projects, which Stu is going to talk about, and that they see as a catalyst for growth, and they actually give them grants. Effectively, they finance it with substituting zero tax and a grant now, and then later they know if there is developments, them as a city would get more revenue in once the project is established. So, yeah, the area in terms of growth, etc., fits perfect.
But if we could maybe just go to the slide about the EB5 investor program, I'm just going to sort of summarize some of the key points.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, Stuart, obviously I've got your presentation. Is there stuff that you want me to, should I click through a couple of slides? I mean, in terms of just giving an overview as to how it works?
Yeah, Scott, if we could go straight to what's called the Block 40 slide, and maybe if you could just go to the project snapshot. Our first project, Hollywood Circle, which is where we had 200 EB5 investors, is currently fully subscribed, and we're currently in the process of launching Block 40, which is a property which is diagonally across the road from our first development. And I just wanted to sort of give a little bit of a breakdown in respect of exactly what that project is going to be all about.
Am I on the right slide? The one that says about Block 40.
Next one. Scott, this is Block 40. It's on a site that was known as the old Southern Hotel site. One can actually Google it. It's a very exciting development. We've got a ground floor retail. As I said, I use the word, we don't like going into what we call widows and orphans investments. We like to have mixed-use developments that can take a change in economy. So, and then also mixed-use developments offer us multiple exit strategies. So Block 40, which will be known as Young Circle Commons, is our second EB5 development opportunity that we're currently doing. And it's made up of 173 residential units, and we've got 103 hotel units, and there's about just over 16,000 square foot of retail. You'll notice that on both our developments, we have a large component of rental stock. I think that Wealth Migrate is familiar, and some of the investors would be familiar that rental stock in the United States is exceptionally popular amongst tenants. So tenants like to go into well-managed and well-oiled rental buildings. So on our first two developments, we've got a fair amount of rental stock. So on Block 40, we've got 173 units, and then we've got 103 bedroom hotel. Just out of interest, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit on Michiel saying how the Hollywood area falls into the redevelopment node coming north from Miami and south from Fort Lauderdale, is that we've managed to secure Hilton International. So Hilton International are our brand that will be managing the hotel component, and there is a major lack of inventory in and around the Fort Lauderdale area at the moment. Hilton International have in fact lost quite a substantial amount of their inventory because of the expansion of the Fort Lauderdale airport, and then also they are predicting that there's going to be a major shortage in respect of hotel rooms going forward as the port authorities expand on the Fort Lauderdale port increase its terminal in respect of the ships that come in, and then also the containerization. So we're quite excited. We've got some great brand associations on this development, and we will have a total of roughly about 100 EB5 opportunities made available. And we literally are in the process of launching this project as we speak.
Okay, so and I mean, in terms of the slides, Stuart, I'm not sure if you want me to go through. I mean, I've personally been on the ground, you know, in terms of Hollywood Circle. It's a lovely. I don't know if you call it a city or it feels like almost Greenwich Village, as an example, in London. It's like a village within a city. But my point being is, you know, what are the details that people need to know, and how do they get access to them?
Yeah, sorry, Scott, I didn't hear that question.
No, my point being is that what are the details that people need to know, and how would they get access to them? Because, like Michiel, you know, rightly pointed out, you know, absence of the EB5, this is still a good investment opportunity. So, in terms of understanding the development, the opportunity, you know, how does someone go into more detail?
Scott, I mean, I normally deal with that as a one-on-one with potential investors. Remember, a lot of our investors don't actually physically ignite the EB5 program. A lot of them are just purely investing from an equity aspect. But if you want to just maybe flip through a couple of the additional images which follow through from this slide, Scott, and then I'll go into the development budget.
So, I mean, this obviously is just the map, and you know, quite a few people have heard of Fort Lauderdale probably, but it's one of the wealthiest areas in America. And my understanding is, you know, this is pretty much, what is it exactly, Stuart? It's about 40 minutes north of Miami, is that right?
Yeah, 40 minutes north of Miami, and one landed at Fort Lauderdale Airport and got onto I-95 heading towards Miami. We literally are 4 minutes away from the international airport. So, I mean, we are just so well located. It's really just an extension of the suburb of Fort Lauderdale.
And then, I mean, this is the circle here in the middle, and I know when I was there, you guys actually own like half the circle already in terms of the developments you've done, and then you took me down this road and took us down with Yaku. We went down to the beach here, etc., etc. The one thing I will say about the American property market is that Miami recovered the best part of over 2 years ago, where properties, you know, fell dramatically back in 2007, 2008, but actually we're back to full price and beyond, you know, more than 2 years ago because of the demand that you've been speaking of.
Scott, just to elaborate on that, I mean, if one, I know that Henry and Michiel have just come back from a visit with us, but I mean, if you drive between Miami and Fort Lauderdale and you just look at the skyline and the amount of development work that's taking place, it is just absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, the developers that are developing at the moment, I mean, obviously it's been fueled by a lot of the South American money that's come into the market, and a lot of the Russian money. But I mean, the developers that are currently developing are developing for cash, and that's a very important thing to be aware of. I mean, we you know, in terms of the capexes that we're currently spending there, we're also developing for cash. But you know, you're starting to see commercial lending and private equity opportunities coming back into the marketplace. So that will be the second wave, and then I mean, you're going to have the third wave, which is when the Americans re-enter the market. So just from a pure investment opportunity, let's put the passports and the visas aside. Is that, you know, if one invests with us, and a lot of our investors' philosophy is that they want to remain in these investments for a fair amount of time. Is you're going to see substantial returns. You've just flipped through 2 slides. You'll see that our development budget on Block 40 at the moment is in the region of $91 million, and our terminal value is in the region of $114 million. So any potential investor that invests with us is going to be sharing in that major upside. And remember, we're conservative by nature. We're very cautious in terms of lending. We've got very limited leverages on all our opportunities. We've got substantial amounts of our own cash involved in this. And in terms of terminal cap values, we've been conservative in terms of our cap values and our projected terminal values. So there's a major upside by investing into an opportunity with us, Scott.
And in terms of the job creation, etc., can you just explain this? Because obviously the whole purpose behind the EB5 from the American government's perspective is that they want to create jobs within the economy.
Correct, Scott. For every tranche of 500,000 USD that we expect, we will be creating directly or indirectly 10 jobs. So currently our job creation on Block 40 is that we would be creating roughly about 1,200 jobs. Bearing in mind that job stats change periodically, so we are always very cautious to provide a bit of a buffer so that we don't ever put any of our EB5 investors at risk in the job creation. Because post-approval, and once an EB5 investor gets to an exit strategy in respect of his investment and is wanting to remove the conditional status of his green card, we do what's known as an I-829 application to the USCIS, and that is when the responsibility from our side as a regional centre comes into play, where we've got to substantiate that we've actually created sufficient jobs during that first 2-year period of the issuance of the green card. So on Block 40, we've got roughly around 1,200 new jobs that have been created, and we always have a buffer of roughly about 20% to take care of either increases or decreases in respective job creation on our developments.
And the capital
this is just a slight capital structure slide, Scott. Obviously, the legal entity that the investors would be subscribing to is known as Block 40 LLC. All our developments are ring-fenced, so for every development we've got a separate LLC, and then we've got what we call Class A shares and we've got Class B shares. EB5 investors would be coming in as preferred equity under Class B, and that is really where the majority of the dilution takes place. So that's a simple structure, but for those that engage with us, I will go into more detail for the step of how that capital structure forms. The next slide, Scott, relates to the ownership structure. What's quite interesting here is that you'll see that we break it down into 3 elements. We've got our contributing members, which is really ourselves. So we make up 24% of the equity and capital structure, and then our managing members, which also are part of our consortium, make up the 6%, and then our EB5 investors make up 70%. So the capital structure is split on. We like to try and have a 70-30 split in respect to the capital structure. So EB5 investors have got a substantial stake and a substantial say in the actual ownership structure of the various investments.
Okay. And in terms of Michiel, I would appreciate actually, Michiel is online, Stuart, and he's actually obviously just got back. And I think obviously better than you or I, he said he had some photos that he wanted to share and also just give his viewpoint as to what he found on the ground. Michiel, are you there? I mean, would you mind sharing in terms of about Hollywood Circle, but what you actually found on the ground and what your thoughts were?
Very much so, Scott. While I'm talking, I've emailed you the photos. You can maybe just put them up for us. I think the issue that myself and Annie were really focusing on was getting really to understand Stewart and their company and then the surrounding areas. We were with 3 investors that is seriously considering the actual EB5 program, and the idea was really to understand this whole setup. So the first thing that we really looked at is depth of experience, and this is one of our criteria of looking at partners. And what we found is a track record of development from 2003, and effectively the GFC has forced Stewardess Group to actually look for alternative financing, and this is how they actually started with the EB5. So we found a very experienced project partner. Then the second thing that was for us really significant is that you can talk as much as you like, but the proof is in the pudding, and I think we will see some of the photos now. So we actually saw the Hollywood Circle development. This is a $150 million development. This is the opportunity just before the Block 40 that Stuart has talked about. So what we saw is actual real development happening on the ground. If you look at the photo that Scott is showing now, on the left-hand side is a tallish guy. That's actually the project manager on site. It's a extremely well experienced project manager that they have employed full-time now to do the development, and you'll see the development just behind us. And what it basically means is that after a 3 or 4 year period of development, they actually are really developing it. They also very recently have got one of their first investors actually released on the EB5 project. So what we see is that the project has already delivered visas, and that the project, as far as we could see, is pretty much on track and on time. So this gives us a great lot of confidence that these guys are really senior and serious developers, and all that we could see is that it's everything that they've been talking about is going and being confirmed straight on site. So that was for us extremely reassuring. And then, like Stuart said, is we can already see in the original projections of their projects and the current projection of the projects, they have really been conservative. And then I think the thing that really struck us was that these investments are effectively debt-free. There's a small component of debt, but what it basically means is it's a rock-solid development. So from a longer-term perspective, I think a lot of investors that I'm talking to at the moment has got a huge concern about the world crisis in terms of exchange rates, not only from a South African perspective, but from a worldwide perspective. A lot of countries has got problems, and the question ultimately comes back, but what about America? They also got problems. So this type of projects where there's no debt and it's effectively a cash project really makes makes it very conservative. And then from a longer term perspective, if you spend this type of money, that you're pretty sure that this is a investment that is not really sensitive to the interest rate hikes, not really sensitive to the economy from a construction perspective, and just bode very well. So yeah, that was our experience. And then what we also then had is we actually met with one or two South Africans that is currently living in Atlanta that has gone through this program, and obviously sharing a little bit about their experience on a practical note with 2 or 3 of the investors that were with us, which is now obviously seriously considering it and having a lot of detailed questions.
This picture is on Hollywood Circle. Just out of interest, I mean, we've now finalized our piling caps, and in fact, we've just signed our additional contract with Stars. Stars is one of the largest contractors in South Florida, and we've got live webcams which physically stream 24/7 to all our development opportunities for those investors that invest with us. Besides monthly newsletters that we send out, which are very detailed. They've invested, we regard them as partners of ours, but we get updates on a monthly basis. And similarly, they can log into webcams which will put them live to various sites. So this is Hollywood Circle, and we're about to be starting with our vertical pilings. And yeah, this project is very much on track. And Michiel, since you're left, we've had an additional almost 50 approvals come. So Yeah, on the processing in respect of the green cards, things are moving on that side.
So guys,
Um,
quite a bit of background noise. I'm just clicking through here, Stuart. Everyone should be able to see just some of the pictures of Hollywood Circle. I know for a fact this is the building that you actually well, there was an existing building that had been knocked down that I stood on the roof with your partners here. And this is obviously all the way around Hollywood Circle and the boulevard on this side. Where's the building here exactly?
but if you go on, it's the building, so it would be the one that's facing closest. That is made up of 390 condo units, 101 bedroom hotel, and then on the ground we've got a public. So for those who don't know, publics are the equivalent of a
Guys, someone is online and got a lot of background noise. Stuart, is there background noise from your side or is it someone else?
not from our side.
Okay, cool. So I muted them. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Scott, let me just repeat that. Hollywood Circle is made up of 3 different elements, 397 condo units. Then we've got a small boutique hotel of 101 rooms. And then on the ground floor, we've secured Publix. And Publix, just out of interest, have signed a 20-year lease with us. So, we've got a nice major anchor tenant. And from an investment aspect, we know that from the date of completion, we've got guaranteed income coming out of the retail element. We know that we've got financial projections from our hotel operator in respect of the hotel portion.
As to the opportunity, etc. But I think really, it's obviously at a one-to-one basis, people can fully understand what is happening, what are the numbers, how does it actually work, how does the EB5 work, what does it actually mean for them, in personally, and between Michiel and Stuart, they can take you through all the details.
Nothing like disappearing for a couple of minutes there.
Are you there, Stuart? No, we got Stuart back. Okay, great. So Stuart, I was just I have no idea what happened there. I'll just put it down to South African internet, I would say. But anyway, all I was doing, Stuart, is that in the essence of time as well, and just being conscious that we kind of want to wrap up around 10 o'clock. I was just running through your slides here and showing people there's a huge amount of detail that people can go through and understanding exactly what is happening, how it's happening, and there's a huge amount, like you said. Not just in Florida. I mean, you've got the St. Thomas opportunity, etc. And what I'd like to do from your side, Stuart, is that if we consider that, say, there's call it 5 minutes left or so, what would you say are the kind of the key things, key takeaways that people need to know about?
Yeah, Scott, I think the urgency factor for those that are wanting to consider and or who have been considering EB5. Now is the time to act before we have these proposed amendments. Secondly is, there are a lot of immigration attorneys that pop in and out of South Africa periodically who offer alternative mechanisms to get into the States. And I always say to people, if the United States is something that's on your radar, don't try and hotwire the system. So I know that a lot of potential people consider going what they call the L1 route, which is basically creating a new business enterprise over there. And I mean, I deal with a lot of these problem cases. So if one is considering immigration to the United States and one is looking for a guaranteed foolproof mechanism, then the EB5 route is the way to go. Literally, if we don't get you to an approval stage, your initial contribution, your capital contribution to us is fully refundable. So it is a guaranteed foolproof mechanism if the United States is something that any of the guys on the webinar are considering.
Okay. No, fantastic. And again, apologies for for the internet switching off. I still don't know exactly why that happened, but I think for me, the important thing really is that there's three things that I would give people that are the takeaway. Firstly, is that like you said, Stuart, it's very timeless. Unfortunately, governments change their mind. It is what it is, and so that's the reason we tried to do the webinar today as quickly as possible to let people know about it. Secondly, having done this for a long time, having helped over 2,400 people invest internationally, I always say that there's only two things that will make you successful. It's your partners and information. And we've done a huge amount of work in the past in terms of understanding who the partners are. We've made mistakes in the past, which has made us even more negative in terms of doing more due diligence. And certainly, like Michiel said, like you said, Stuart, I was very impressed. I know Michiel was, I know Henny was, I know Hilda's been, with regards to your real estate and development experience, which is critical. And the third thing for me is that when you look at the countries around the world, America is the only first world country that is growing. And when you compare it to even Australia or Europe, and it provides an opportunity, and it's one of the reasons why I know for a fact that Henny and Michiel, it's funny Michiel mentioned it, but it's a family thing. You sit down with your family and you ultimately make a decision as to with your family, what you're going to do. And I know that Henny and them have actually changed their mind as to which country they were going to immigrate to should they leave South Africa. And for many reasons, America has now tipped Australia. And again, one of the things I would say to people is that for me personally, we've got this event that we're doing collectively with Stuart, with Henny, with Hilda, with Michiel, and in an hour it's very, very difficult to share decades worth of experience. But what we've done is we've decided that there's a real need within South Africa for people to come together to debate, to learn. I mean, Henny's been investing overseas for nearly 15 years. Like Stuart mentioned, they've been doing it for 14 years. Hilda's been investing overseas for a long time. I've been investing overseas for 16 years. And rather than a bunch of keynotes and kind of a sellathon where, people run to the back of the room and try and buy stuff, it's actually to debate and learn the lessons, both from their mistakes and their successes of people. And I know, Stuart, you're actively involved in this. And we really want to provide South Africans with a solution to empower themselves and to find their own solutions, because everyone's different. Some people, there might be a very strong reason why to move to Australia or England or Cyprus for that matter. But the point being is that to provide an environment to be able to debate it, to discuss it, and to go into a lot more detail. So obviously there's a very timeless requirement with regards to EB5, and unfortunately there's nothing we can do about that at the end of September. But if it's too quick for people, just like my uncle, and it's the reason I started off with my uncle, the reason my uncle had the freedom to make the decisions he wanted for his family was that 23 years earlier he was prepared to strategically put in place certain items. And so for me, Stuart, it's a case of, yes, if people are desperate, they're keen, they've got the cash right now, and they want to save $300,000, then they can get hold of you or Michiel literally in the next day or so. But if it's too quick and they want more information and they want to come and understand not just America but other countries, and for me, Stuart and I and a number of other people have been doing this for a long time, and we kind of know. I like what you said, Stuart, about the traveling salesman or the traveling immigration attorney. You and I have seen them come for years and years and years, and we've also seen them disappear, and we've seen a lot of people get hurt. And so what we've tried to do is put together an event or forum where kind of the trusted people can come together. Those of us that have been in this for more than a decade, and come together to provide solutions for people and to debate and to ask questions and really kind of get to the essence of why we do what we do and how we do what we do. And for me, I look forward to spending 2 days with you, Stuart, at that event, but also personally with a lot of other people, and between us we're going to debate stuff, and again, we don't necessarily know all the answers, but collectively we can come up with far better solutions than we can on our own.
Absolutely, Scott. I mean, I'm looking forward to the event. It's going to be great to be on the stage with yourself, with Hilda, who's an existing investor. And I also noticed yesterday that Garth Wellman from Clio Capital is going to be joining us. And Garth's been a great ambassador for Gold Coast, Florida. So I think it's going to be a great forum, and I would encourage those that are listening to try and attend that seminar. So it's going to be a powerful and informative session.
Oh, excellent. So in conclusion, basically, and I know we lost a couple of people when the internet knocked us off, but in conclusion, what we will do is we'll follow up. I will send a recording of this to everyone that's online. If you are interested, I will put on the email. I will give you Michiel and Stuart's details, and you can contact them directly. If you want to just put in the chat box, Michiel and or Stuart, and one of them can get back to you literally in the next day or so. And really, I just want to thank you for your time, Stuart, and Michiel. Thank you for your time as well. I feel very, very passionately about what I started off with, which for me, it's all about providing people with freedom. I don't care where they live. I don't care where they want to send their kids to school or university or where they want to go on holiday. But I do care a huge amount. I feel very passionately about people having the freedom to be able to make that choice. And I believe that you're one of the better people we've found worldwide, Stuart, that are providing people with that freedom. And that's why it's been an honor to share this hour or so with you and share with South Africans some positive solutions. And again, it's not necessarily about leaving South Africa tomorrow morning, but it's about having solutions and the freedom to make those choices.
Great, Scott. I appreciate the time. Thanks very much to yourself, to Wealth Migrate, to Michiel. I'll be going to check what the Rand's doing right now.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks very much to everyone online. And as I say, if there's any questions, we'll create the forum. And till next time. And we hope to see as many as possible of you live at the major event on the 8th and 9th. We've got some, along with Stuart, Michiel, Henny, Hilda, Garth. There's 40 other people, but they're not presenters. They're investors. They're entrepreneurs that are coming together to share their experiences and to help empower South Africans. So we look forward to starting that conversation and being part of the solution to not only create a fantastic country, but to continue allowing South Africans the freedom to live the life that they choose to. So I look forward to seeing you all at that event as well. Stuart, thanks for your time. Thanks for everyone that's online. Michiel, thank you for your time. And I look forward to helping people in the future.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Take care.
Cheers, everyone. Bye then.